Part 6. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 51. Chapter 51. This woman is so scary. Nearly a day and a night later, Jong Kaiwan finally found something to eat by his own ability. Jong Kaiwan didn't feel hungry anymore. He put the dug food on the rocks next to him and turned back to continue digging with enthusiasm. There were only 5 or 6 trees in total, and he pulled them all out and piled them on the rocks. They looked quite spectacular. Then he began to distribute the food confidently. Eat these 2 small pieces raw to quench your thirst first. The rest will be roasted. The cooked ones will last for a few days. It will be enough for the 2 of us to eat for several days. Zhang Lingzi saw him gathering firewood again. Although she still had some doubts about the pile of things that had just been dug out on the rocks, she still cooperated and lit the fire. Leave the 2 pieces that were to be eaten raw, and throw the rest into the fire. The soil on the surface of the food is quickly burnt, and soon, a faint and slightly bitter taste permeates the air. As soon as Zhang Lingzi added a piece of firewood to the fire, she heard Jong Kaiwan, who was sitting next to her, let out a light sigh. "What's wrong? Is there something wrong with the smell of this roast?" Jong Kaiwan said and moved closer to the fire, sniffing. "I remember that the taste was sweet when roasted before, but this one feels a bit astringent. Could it be that it's still? Was he picked out by me before he was familiar with you?" Upon hearing this, Zhang Lingzi directly picked up the 2 pieces that were not thrown into the fire and handed them over. "Look carefully to see if they are the same as those you ate before. Just like the soap berries I picked up before, there are some things they look similar, but they're probably not the same plant." Jong Kaiwan took it and turned it over and over. "Actually, it was several years ago when I last ate this, but it seems to be like this." "It seems." Zhang Lingzi picked up the branch at hand and lit the fire in front of her. Her tone was slightly cold. "This is what I will eat in my stomach later. I don't want to give a specious answer, but I found this with great difficulty. Maybe it's because I'm not familiar with it." Jong Kaiwan defended himself in a low voice, and then smelled the smell coming from the fire. "The astringent smell has become lighter. That's probably because it's not cooked properly ripe." Zhang Lingzi looked at him quietly for 2 seconds, then turned to look at the fire in front of her, and suddenly stood up. Jong Kaiwan quickly stood up and asked, "Where are you going?" "Find something," Zhang Lingzi said, holding the bow and arrow hanging on a branch nearby, and told Jong Kaiwan, "You keep it here and watch the fire. Remember, you are not allowed to eat the things you dug out before I come back." Jong Kaiwan said with a matter-of-fact expression, "Then I will definitely have to wait for you to come back and eat together." Zhang Lingzi: "Although I think it's wrong, it's okay if I don't eat it." What she is looking for is actually very simple: a living, small animal. Since you are not sure whether those things can be eaten, it is very simple. Find a helper to help you taste them. Jong Kaiwan stayed where he was and watched the fire, while another photographer followed behind Zhang Lingzi. The camera repeatedly glanced at the bow and arrow in Zhang Lingzi's hand, which also attracted the attention of the audience in the live broadcast room. "The last time I shot an arrow was at night, so it didn't look very clear. It is now noon, they must keep their eyes open to see. How about it, have you found the phone number of the program group where that girl Ling 11 works?" Wei Kei met Mr. Su's gaze, frowned, and shook his head. "Mr. Su, what will happen if you eat what they dug?" "It will cause nausea and diarrhea. In severe cases, it may even cause syncope. Although it is not life-threatening, Ling 11's girl should have started taking the medicine I prescribed for her. She can't take a bite of it." He found this survival show a bit interesting, but now he was already scolding Zhang Lingzi in his heart. "You don't know what your constitution is, yet you dare to participate in such a dangerous program before you have developed it well. Unfortunately, there is a screen across the screen. Even if he wants to scold a disobedient patient, he has to be able to hear him. Grandpa, look, Su Xingyuan, who had been sitting in front of his mobile phone, suddenly shouted. Su Mo-kun pulled his face and glanced at the screen subconsciously. Zhang Lingzi in the live broadcast room was putting an arrow on his bow and aiming it at a palm-sized gray bird standing on a branch. Looking at that posture, it's quite intimidating. Su Xingyuan, my beautiful sister is so handsome. Wei Kai narrowed his eyes. Don't think this bird is small, but it can fly. Before he could say the word quickly, Zhang Lingzi suddenly let go of the arrow in his hand and flew straight towards the little bird standing on the branch. However, the opponent is also very vigilant when living in the jungle. When he senses danger, he quickly spreads his wings and avoids it. Many people felt that Zhang Lingzi's arrow was going to miss when they saw this, but Wei Kai subconsciously looked at Zhang Lingzi's side face in the corner of the screen when everyone was following the arrow that shot through the air. That face was very calm, and he was also confident in himself. His suddenly came from the live broadcast room, but it was not Zhang Lingzi's voice, but the voice of the photographer next to her. The real ending is that the bird did spread its wings and tried to escape, but just when it took off, the arrow arrived and accurately hit one of its wings. Zhang Lingzi walked over and picked up the bird that fell on the ground, and the camera also moved over. When he saw clearly where the bird was shot, the photographer couldn't help but take a breath again. Without him, this arrow was not a fatal injury in any way, but it just happened to make the bird lose its ability to fly, and it was forced to fall from the sky. I just don't know if Zhang Lingzi calculated it correctly or if it was just a coincidence. The live broadcast room went silent for a while, and then someone sent out a barrage, coincidence, isn't it a coincidence? Looking at Zhang Lingzi walking back with the struggling bird, Su Mo-kun coughed lightly. Wyke, do you think the arrow this girl just shot was a coincidence? Probably not, Wei Kai shook his head invisibly. I speculate that she originally planned to use live animals to see if the things dug out by her teammates were edible. Not long after Wei Kai said these words, Su Mo-kun and the audience in the live broadcast room saw Zhang Lingzi, who had returned, and ordered Zhang Kaiwen to take out the roasted roots from the fire, and without hesitation fed a piece to the little bird in the palm of his hand. In the belly. Zhang Kaiwen stared at the bird that appeared out of thin air in Zhang Lingzi's hand with wide eyes. Test the poison. Well, there are no small animals around. I only found this bird if it is still alive and kicking after eating it. It means it can be eaten if it is eaten to death, you know. The method is a bit simple and crude, but it is useful. Some girls who were watching the live broadcast felt that this was a bit cruel, but they also knew that they were watching a survival show. Compassion was the last thing to show at this time, so they silently let go of the hand that was preparing to send a barrage. Just looking at Zhang Lingzi doing all this expressionlessly, and thinking about the arrow she just calmly shot, I feel like I want to delete the words I used to scold Zhang Lingzi. Why? Mom, this woman is so scary. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 52. Chapter 52, we must put an end to Zhang Kaiwen's evil intentions. Looking at the little bird with an injured wing in Zhang Lingzi's hand but still struggling to escape, Zhang Kaiwen couldn't help but smile. Look, I said it's nothing, it's still alive and kicking. Before she could say the word jump, Zhang Lingzi felt the little thing in her palm suddenly tremble. When she lowered her head, she saw that its neck had stopped moving. Very quickly, I don't know if it was 1 second or 2 seconds. After struggling twice, he stopped completely. At this time, not only Zhang Kaiwen was stunned on the spot, but even the audience in the live broadcast room couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. No one cares whether it is cruel or not, as long as they think that if the poison is not tested in advance, the two of them will eat it without realizing it. The consequences could be disastrous. Even Li Shuo, who was holding a cup of strong tea, stood up immediately when he saw this. After taking a deep breath, he gave instructions to all the photographers following the guests. The edible testers will be sent out in advance. The detector is used to detect whether plants are poisonous and edible. He originally planned to wait for 2 days before the guests would go deeper into the jungle. By then, the number of plant species in the forest would increase, so they would not eat them by mistake. The detector could provide the right help. Who would have thought that just 1 day later, John Kaiwan would trigger his plan and directly dig out a pile of poisonous plant roots? If this is still kept under wraps, God knows if John Kaiwan, with his black hands, will find a bunch of poisons that can be poisoned by just touching them. By then it will be too late to take any measures. After getting the detector and being told its purpose, John Kaiwan couldn't help but glare in the direction of the camera. Why didn't you take out this thing earlier? Li Shuo was so stunned by this look that he almost blew his beard. Wilderness survival, what the audience wants to see is the ability of the guests to survive in the wilderness. If there is too much help, it will lose a lot of fun. Besides, we are still on the outer edge of the jungle, and their experts have already explored it in advance. Both plants and animals on the outer edge are very safe. Who would have thought you could dig some poisonous plants out of the ground? Put out the fire, dig a deep pit and bury the roasted roots. Zhang Lingzi also dug a pit for the little bird who was trying to test the poison. When Zhang Kaiwan saw this, he found a short and thick stick and took a knife. He carved a few words as a tombstone, and after erecting it, he took a few steps back and paid his respects. Zhang Lingzi looked at his actions. An audience in the live broadcast room. Inexplicably, I felt that this scene was a bit funny, but I couldn't help but laugh. But for the parents of the guests who almost took poison, Mother Zhang breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at Zhang Lingzi again, the original prejudice in her eyes had completely disappeared, and she was even more grateful. The gangster had never been back to the countryside a few times when he was this old. He couldn't even tell the difference between onions and garlic sprouts at home, so he dared to dig out the food he thought he had eaten and roast it. If Miss Zhang hadn't questioned it, he would have thought so. She came up with a way to test the poison. When she thought that her son would eat these poisons, her heart felt like it was fried. Fortunately, people are still doing well. Originally, she planned to ask her husband to contact the production team. This kind of wilderness survival was so dangerous, so she simply quit filming. Having already taken out her mobile phone, she saw a tester handed out by the program team. After hesitating for a moment, she still did not press the dial button. Well, now that there is a detector and the cautious Miss Zhang is watching from the side, she can feel more at ease. Besides, this will most likely not listen to her. With an accident like Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Kaiwan's accident that almost led to a tragedy, other guests also benefited in advance. The happiest ones are the group of Yu Hui and Zhang Ziyu. Zhang Ziyu directly took the tester into his hand and looked at the photographer who handed him the thing. Has this been prepared a long time ago? Why are you sending it out now? If she had sent it out earlier, she wouldn't have looked at the various plants in the forest and been afraid that this one couldn't be eaten and that one couldn't be eaten. She was still dizzy with hunger on an empty stomach. Now don't let her eat normal food. As long as it's not poisonous, she can eat grass or tree leaves. Yu Hui also frowned and looked at the photographer. He had the same idea as Zhang Ziyu. From this point of view, it can be seen that Zhang Kaiwan was too reckless, while the two people in front of him were too cautious. But in this strange jungle, there is nothing wrong with being overly cautious, except that you will feel uncomfortable with hunger. Despite the pressured looks from the two guests, the photographer who was responsible for delivering the testing machines could not resist and could only tell the truth. Originally, according to the regulations of the program team, the testing machines were to be distributed on the third day. To all the teachers, it's just that something happened to Teacher Zhang and Teacher Jiang's group just now, so the director asked us to distribute them to everyone in advance. When Zhang Ziyu heard that there was an accident on Zhang Lingzi's side, he quickly asked, "Accident? What accident?" Teacher Zhang regards poisonous plants as non-poisonous. Have they eaten? Are you okay? Mainly, did Zhang Lingzi eat it? No, fortunately Teacher Zhang found small animals to help test the poison, and the two teachers survived. Zhang Ziyu tried his best to suppress the regret in his heart and put on a happy face. That's good. Why didn't you eat it? Yu turned his head and looked at his goddess with bright eyes. As a rival, the goddess still cares about Zhang Lingzi so much. She is indeed a beautiful and kind-hearted little fairy. Even though she is a little embarrassed now, she is still the most perfect in his eyes. 11 Yu, let's use this detector to see what food is around. We haven't eaten for almost a day, and I'm worried you won't be able to hold on. The main reason is that he himself can't hold it any longer, but for the sake of face, he can't say it. That's fine. Zhang Ziyu nodded in agreement. He suppressed the impatience in his heart. After turning on the detector, he picked a small green berry growing on the plant next to him, squeezed it, and applied it to the test area of the detector. On the stick. She actually regrets joining you to form a team now. It is true that the other party really cared about her and carried her on his back without a single complaint, but it was still useless in her opinion. Otherwise, I haven't even found anything to eat in the past so long, and I am just a pampered rich man with nothing but good physical strength. If it were teacher Linjing or the one named Suzhao, she wouldn't be hungry now. After waiting for a moment, the screen of the detector came on. Zhang Ziyu quickly looked over, but was almost dumbfounded when he saw the content displayed on the screen. After posing as if she was looking seriously, she waved back to Yu, "Come here." Yu Hui then moved closer to her. After reading what was displayed on the screen, he said, "It's not poisonous, but it doesn't belong to the human food family. It shouldn't taste very good." Zhang Ziyu breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it's not poisonous, I don't care about the taste at this time. As he spoke, he picked another berry, rubbed it and put it in his mouth. He wanted to bite it, but he hesitated and swallowed it whole. Yu Hui saw her swallowing without chewing clearly from the side. The goddess is quite cute when she has a tough mouth. He finally started to eat edible grass with the help of a detector. On the other side, Zhang Lingzi used a detector to test the plants that Zhang Kaiwen had pulled out before. When she saw the results on the tester, she didn't understand it and called Zhang Kaiwen, who was still a little worried about the plant. "What does it mean?" The anti-fans in the live broadcast room saw this and finally found the opportunity to ridicule. "It's really a Julu, I can't even understand this. I suggest that a certain Zhang star should go back to school to take extra classes to improve his academic qualifications. Without Zhang Kaiwen, you wouldn't be able to use the tester if it were given to you." Such a comparison, at least Ranzia graduated from a regular university. How can I be embarrassed to be a star without a good academic degree these days? Seeing this road where people stepped on the barrage, Zheng Zheng couldn't help but cursed, "You know nothing, Zhang Ziyu isn't any better. The university is gold-plated, and you didn't see that she didn't do it just now. Do you understand? It's all just pretending." Ah, I'm so angry. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 53. Chapter 53, Different Ways of Handling Prey. Are you taking Mukang medicine? Lu Zhengzheng looked back at Tong Yu, who walked in from the door. It's not like some of the audience are too irritating. I really can't stand it. Tong Yu patted her shoulder and looked at the little girl's face filled with indignation. I've never seen you react so much before. After the words came out of her mouth, she sighed slightly in her heart. The reason is simple. In the few short days since Zhang Lingzi woke up, she has completely won over Lu Zhengzheng's heart. That's why I subconsciously defend myself and am dissatisfied with the comments of black fans. This transformation is naturally not just based on that face. When a person is calm and smart, his personality charm is terrifying. As an agent, she is naturally happy to see the results. These people dare to bark online. If you feel uncomfortable, just turn off the barrage. That won't work. Lu Zhengzheng shook his head. I have to write down the account names of these people to see if they will be really popular in the future. By the way, Sister Tong, when you just went out to work, Sister Zixi, there was also a near miss. Oh, what a near miss. In the live broadcast room. Zhang Kaiwen touched his nose after reading the introduction on the detector. It does belong to the same family but two plants. He admitted his mistake with drooping eyes. Sister Zixi, I'm sorry, I did get the bigger one this time. Since he couldn't eat, Zhang Lingzi said that he would continue on his way. Zhang Kaiwen did not dare to say that he was still hungry and wanted to rest for a while, so he followed him obediently. The deeper you go, the denser the jungle becomes, and the traces of human beings become less and less. Zhang Kaiwen took the tester while walking and tested, and finally found several green fruits and plant roots that were edible and tasted good, enough for the two of them to barely satisfy their hunger. But the energy added is still far less than the energy consumed. Still have to eat meat. As the sun set in the west, Zhang Kaiwen rested dizzily on the trunk of a big tree. Zhang Lingzi climbed onto a rock nearby. After looking at the surrounding environment, she said, "Don't rest anymore. Let's go forward." Zhang Kaiwen reluctantly opened his eyes, and suddenly his eyes blurred, and he looked over again. Meat, there is meat. Zhang Lingzi also saw the flower rabbit running among the bushes not far away at almost the same time. At a single glance, you can tell that this time it was not placed by someone sent by the program team, but a wild one. Because he ran too fast. Before she could assemble her bow, she saw that the man who was so tired just now that he couldn't walk was now chasing the rabbit with bright eyes, so fast that she couldn't even stop him. With his sight blocked, Zhang Lingzi had no choice but to put down the bow in his hand and chase after him. As expected, I didn't catch up. Zhang Kaiwen looked at the rabbit that got into an unknown hole and disappeared in a blink of an eye. His face was full of despair. The meat is gone. Zhang Lingzi, I can't bear to look at it. Let's go. It's a pity that someone didn't want to give up yet, and asked eagerly, would you like to stop looking? Zhang Lingzi had already turned around and walked back. Follow me. Have you ever heard of the Three Cunning Rabbits Cave? Now is the rabbit breeding season. This place is still on the outskirts of the jungle. There are no large animals. I'm afraid there are rabbit holes extending in all directions. How can you find them? So, there are rabbits all over the ground, but we just can't eat them. Zhang Lingzi. This is how persistent you are about eating. You didn't do anti-hunger training before joining the show. Ah, there is this kind of training? I always eat when I'm hungry. Zhang Lingzi held her forehead, and after taking Zhang Kaiwen out for a certain distance, she suddenly turned around and looked at a bird on the grass not far away, thinking that there was no danger. The rabbit that just poked its head out of the hole was hit by an arrow unexpectedly. The arrow flew past less than 10 centimeters away from the side of his face, and even brought up strands of hair on his temples. After Zhang Kaiwen remained on the spot as a wooden figure for a few seconds, he dared to move his stiff shoulders and head, and rubbed his head. He wiped away the beads of sweat on his temples and mechanically looked back in the direction of the arrow. Sister Zixi, a wandering voice sounded, can we say hello before we shoot arrows? Want to say hello or eat meat? Then let's eat meat. Hey, I'll pick up rabbits and there's meat to eat again. The effect of this arrow shot was not only that they had meat to eat again, but also shocked many people who were watching the live broadcast. The shot last night might have been a result of the show's team's coordination, and the shot that shot the bird in the morning might have been a coincidence, but no one dared to say that the shot just now was a fluke. The three elements of archery are fast, accurate and ruthless. In that arrow shot just now, none of the three elements were missing. I can describe this arrow in just 3 words, it's so handsome. It seems that some people who still don't want to believe that Zhang Lingzi is really capable can shut up now. If they are still chattering, why not try shooting an arrow? Don't talk about Zhang Kaiwen, I was also scared to death. How did Zhang Lingzi notice that a rabbit appeared and took aim with a bow in such a short period of time? Did someone record the screen? I want to see the slow playback. +1, this is my first time watching a live broadcast and I actually want to click slow play. Zhang Kaiwen, who picked up the rabbit, once again acted as a mouthpiece for the audience. Zhang Lingzi thought for a while and gave a more general answer, it depends on experience and feel. Otherwise, how can she say that as long as she shoots enough enemies and prey, she can achieve this level? I am afraid no one will believe this answer, and they will think that there is something wrong with her brain. Zhang Kaiwen thought for a while and decided to change the question, then if I start learning archery, how long will it take to reach your level? He didn't think so before, but now he discovered that archery is so cool. Zhang Lingzi, I don't want to hit you. Zhang Kaiwen, okay, no need to explain, I understand. The audience in the live broadcast room not only showed no sympathy, but also said, ha 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 ha. Okay, let's get rid of the rabbit. Zhang Kaiwen let go of his disappointment and sincerely asked, how to deal with it? Zhang Lingzi wanted to just say peel off the skin, but then she thought that there might be viewers eating in the live broadcast room, so she changed to a euphemistic way, keep what is edible and throw away what cannot be eaten. Zhang Kaiwen, I'll fight for the meat. The other side. On the way back from avoiding the goddess to go to the toilet, he happened to encounter a lone baby rabbit. After catching it without any effort, he happily went back and presented the treasure to the goddess. As I said, we have something to eat tonight. Look. How about having roast rabbit tonight? Ah, Zhang Ziyu exclaimed when he saw the little rabbit's red round eyes. After taking it, he carefully touched the little rabbit's ears that were hurt by being picked up, it's so cute. Seeing her looking like she couldn't put it down holding the rabbit, Yu Hui suddenly had a bad feeling. The next second, the premonition came true. The goddess looked at him eagerly, with an expression of pity and compassion. Yu Hui, the bunny is so small and so cute, how can you bear to eat it? Otherwise, let it go. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 54. Chapter 54 Humanoid Weather Forecast. Yu Hui held on to his last glimmer of hope, hoping that the goddess would give up this decision that he did not want to agree with. I caught this little rabbit when it was alone. Even if we let it go, its fate will be even greater animals to eat. He didn't say the last sentence, it's better to be eaten by us, but he believed that the goddess could understand what he meant. Zhang Ziyu looked a little confused as he touched the fluffy little rabbit in his hand. Just when I thought there was hope for eating meat, I heard Zhang Ziyu say, then let's just keep this little rabbit. It's so small and can't eat much. Just feed it some grass. Yu Hui almost couldn't hold on to the smile on his face. What kind of spirit is this? You don't even have to eat yourself, so you still have to feed them edible food? His throat was blocked and he managed to hold back his voice, just be happy. After reaching an agreement, Zhang Ziyu contentedly pinched some of the tenderest grass tips and fed them to the little rabbit's mouth. Watching it open its mouth and eat it, the mustaches on both sides trembled with the chewing action, and he suddenly looked fascinated. He looked so cute that his heart trembled, it's so cute. Yu Hui, look at how cute it is when it eats. How could anyone have the heart to kill such a cute little guy? He really couldn't say anything in agreement at this time, so he could only respond with a stiff smile. Because he is the one who is very tolerant. At present, most of the audience in their live broadcast room are fans of Zhang Ziyu. As a newcomer, and because he has not performed particularly well yet, the number of viewers attracted is very limited. As a fan, it doesn't matter what the goddess has done, just praise her. We Zio are indeed little fairies with beautiful personalities and kind hearts. The little rabbit is really small and cute. The goddess has to feed the little rabbit even if she doesn't have enough to eat. How can she be so kind? Seeing the scene of 11U feeding a little rabbit to eat grass, I also want to buy a rabbit as a pet. Of course, there are also some passers-by who like to hang around in various live broadcast rooms, and some of them have just come from Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Kaiwen's live broadcast rooms. Thinking of the barbecue that had started over there, and seeing the people here eating grass with rabbits, the strong contrast made him couldn't help but start typing silently, I want to say something to Zhang Lingzi in another live broadcast room, I feel like I am being understood. Since he said he would keep the little rabbit, Zhang Ziyu hugged the rabbit and walked together when they set off again. It was hard to find a place where he could spend the night. The first thing Zhang Ziyu did was to make a barrier for the little rabbit to prevent it. A comfortable place to sleep while running around. Seeing the goddess taking such meticulous care of a little guy who was just food in his eyes, Yu Hui clenched his back molars silently. He endures it. Asterisk. The other side. After eating and drinking, Zhang Kaiwen saw a cluster of bamboo growing nearby while it was still dark. He walked over with his belly in his arms and folded 2 twigs for picking his teeth. After returning, he handed one over and said, Sister Zixi, do you want? No need. Zhang Lingzi piled the firewood aside, sat down cross-legged and waved her hands. Zhang Kaiwen sat down and hesitated for a moment before expressing his doubts. Sister Zixi, I always feel that today's rabbit meat is a little different from what I ate yesterday. Today's rabbit meat is a bit raw and not as tender as yesterday's. Zhang Lingzi was putting firewood in the fire. Hearing this, he raised his head and glanced at him. You are quite naughty. That's it, my tongue, let me tell you this, as long as it's a dish I've tasted, if I try it the second time, I can tell whether the chef has changed or not. Zhang Lingzi looked at his proud look and said, oh. She can't say that what you ate yesterday was domesticated, and what you ate today is wild. You do not believe. That's not true. Zhang Lingzi wanted to say that she also had a tricky tongue, but there was another very important thing at this moment. I have to remind you that it may rain tomorrow. Really or not, Zhang Kaiwen immediately put the naughty topic behind him, stood up and found a relatively empty place nearby and began to look up at the sky. The moon and stars are so bright, just look at it. It's a sunny day. You can't just look at the weather. Zhang Lingzi squeezed the firewood she just picked up, especially in the jungle. Then what are we going to see? When he came back and saw the still calm figure, Zhang Kaiwen felt certain in his heart for no reason. Many, such as this firewood. Hearing this, Zhang Kaiwen also picked up one and carefully observed it for a moment. It seems a bit damp. Because the water vapor is condensing, the firewood is already dry, but it will be obvious when it becomes damp. By this time, Zhang Kaiwen was already convinced. Then why can't we get down tonight? It hasn't condensed enough to form rain, so I just said it might rain. Zhang Lingzi felt that she was still not good at preaching to others, so she ended the previous topic decisively, just in case, we have to be prepared. Zhang Kaiwen hates rainy days the most, but he also knows that Zhang Lingzi has a point. Thinking that the jungle might be wet everywhere tomorrow, and even if he couldn't find shelter, he would get wet all over his body. He already felt sticky all over his body. By the way, there's food. People are reluctant to go out on a rainy day, and animals covered in fur are even less willing to show up. Then where do they go to find food? Thinking of this, Zhang Kaiwen was a little dumbfounded. Is it possible that he still cannot escape the fate of starvation? Zhang Lingzi sat across from him and watched his face change over and over without knowing what he was thinking. After waiting for a while and seeing that he was still wandering in his mind, she simply coughed lightly and said, "Go to rest early today. We will set off at dawn tomorrow to find shelter from the rain, the place and the food." Zhang Kaiwen nodded subconsciously. I'd better keep watch for the rest of the night. If that doesn't work, you should keep watch. I'm afraid I won't wake up in the morning. Although there are two following photographers nearby, apart from taking pictures, the photographer's mouth is like having tape on it. Unless the director orders, don't expect them to say a word. Zhang Lingzi simply hummed and immediately leaned against the tree trunk and closed her eyes. After just a few breaths, he forced himself into a state of light sleep. Zhang Kaiwen. This is not the first time Zhang Lingzi has seen Zhang Lingzi enter a sleeping state, but every time he sees it, he can't help but be amazed. This speed is so fast. He wants to learn. Although Zhang Lingzi fell asleep, the audience in the live broadcast room was still active, even more active than during the day because it was rest time. The barrages are flowing very fast. Does anyone know where the show is filmed? I want to check the weather forecast to see if it will really rain tomorrow. The program crew did not disclose the filming location, probably because they were afraid that fans would sneak in and interfere with the filming. However, according to the aerial images taken by the drone, the terrain and the distribution of plant species in the jungle, it should be the Wuo Mountains in the southwest of the country. Don't know if it's accurate, just for reference. Thank you to the top students in front of you, I will check it out right now. No, does anyone really believe Zhang Lingzi's nonsense? She said it would rain tomorrow, but it was going to rain. I also said it would hail tomorrow, pretending that everyone knows it. Poor Yuan was fooled by this woman. Stunned for a moment. Well, I didn't want to post a barrage at first, but seeing what the previous netizen said, I might as well say something. I just came from Sui and Zhou Yi's live broadcast room, and they also said that it might rain tomorrow. Based on the words of those two experience, I think, should be convincing enough. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 55. Chapter 55. The storm is coming. Lu Zhengzheng, who was about to launch a barrage of comments, took back his hand and hummed in a low voice, Gongjing, if you have the ability, follow up. Tong Yu finished calling the phone in her hand and looked over. She saw the girl's face looking angry and relieved. She shook her head in a funny way. What happened in the live broadcast room? She is also busy with work and cannot pay attention to her own artist's live broadcast room all the time. Fortunately, the assistant does not miss this at all, and even consciously pays attention to other people's live broadcast rooms. If she wants to know the progress of the wilderness survival program, she can just ask Lu Zhengzheng. Sister Zixi just said in the live broadcast room that it might rain tomorrow. Let's go to the cafeteria to have dinner and talk while walking. As soon as they arrived at the entrance of the canteen, the two of them met their boss, who was also working overtime in the company. Mr. Xiao. Hello, Mr. Xiao. Xiao Yifeng paused when he saw Tong Yu. Tong Yu's heart suddenly trembled when she saw this. Before the other party could speak, she spoke first. Mr. Xiao, if you want to say that Xiao 11 didn't take care of Yu Hui in the show, it's not our Xiao 11's fault. In the live broadcast room the photo was clearly taken. Yu Hui took the initiative to get close to Zhang Ziyu. You also know the situation between Xiao 11 and Zhang Ziyu. Since Yu Hui chose to be with Zhang Ziyu, then Xiao 11 will not maybe even get closer to them. Xiao Yifeng was stopped and raised his eyebrows. I've never seen you defend Zhang Lingzi like this before. Tong Yu paused and said, things are different now. If Zhang Lingzi continues to act as wantonly as before, no matter how patient she is, one day she will run out of patience. But now that the girl has got her lost brain back, as an agent, she naturally hopes that Zhang Lingzi will develop better and better. To put it bluntly, between managers and artists, both prosper and suffer losses. If she doesn't defend her own artists, who will she defend? I also watched the live broadcast. Okay. Zhang Lingzi's performance on the show has indeed improved a lot, which is a good thing. Xiao Yifeng nodded and commented, I didn't know in advance that he was a fan of Zhang Ziyu. Since I chose to follow Zhang Ziyu, I don't have to worry about Zhang Lingzi, so let's keep filming according to this momentum. Hearing the expectations and optimism for his own artists from the mouth of the big boss, Tong Yu immediately changed her sad face when she complained, and made a pleased gesture with a smile. Mr. Xiao, you are wise and discerning, I will do it for you, thank you, Zioxi. Xiao Yifeng snorted and strode into the restaurant. Seeing the big boss enter, Lu Zhengzheng dared to take a step forward. Sister Tong, does Mr. Xiao mean to pay more attention to Sister Zixi again? Tong Yu smiled and nodded, that's pretty much the same. As long as your Sister Zixi can maintain her current IQ and EQ, and no longer run around and offend people like she did before, she will have a place in this circle sooner or later. After all, he has a face that even God is chasing after him to feed him. Lu Zhengzheng quickly clasped his hands together, bless me. Asterisk. Zhang Kaiwen usually likes to stay up late. He boasts that I can't sleep until the moon doesn't sleep, so he still doesn't deserve to be a bald baby. It's just that since he participated in wilderness survival, during the day he was either on the road or looking for food. At night, not to mention staying up full of energy, he was already thinking about whether to find a small wooden stick to prop up his eyelids. He couldn't help but cover his mouth and yawned again. He looked in the direction of the photographer who was keeping watch with him without leaving any trace. The photographer, who was also extremely sleepy, was smearing cooling oil on his forehead while munching on compressed biscuits, and looked embarrassed. In the end, he couldn't stand Zhang Kaiwen's eager eyes, so he stretched out his hand to secretly sign the number 2. Meaning it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Zhang Yuan looked away with understanding. He originally wanted to guard the whole night by himself. After all, during the day, he didn't do anything to help Zhang Lingzi except accompanying him on the road. The only food he found was poisonous. Thinking back on it, so far, it seems that I have only been used for keeping vigil. But he still overestimated his current ability to stay up late, feeling that he really couldn't hold on any longer. Sister Zixi. Before he could shout out the second time, Zhang Kaiwen looked into a pair of eyes that had just opened but were particularly clear under the firelight. After being stunned for a second, he said, "You didn't just close your eyes and didn't sleep at all, did you? How can anyone who has just woken up be so sober?" "I fell asleep," Zhang Lingzi cleared her throat and moved her somewhat stiff body, "but I didn't sleep to death." Zhang Kaiwen, who forgot himself after falling asleep and didn't know where he was. Feeling to be understood. "Go to sleep." Seeing Zhang Kaiwen's head tilted and he fell asleep in seconds, and even fell into a deep sleep, Zhang Lingzi raised her head and looked at the sky. The sky is no longer as clear as it was before she fell asleep. It seems that tomorrow's rain may not be avoided. The time to wake her up was almost an hour later than originally agreed. Looking back to Zhang Kaiwen, who had completely slept to death, Zhang Lingzi smiled knowingly. Time passes quietly. Zhang Kaiwen thought he was just taking a nap. When he woke up and opened his eyes, he saw that the sky was already dark. The fire in front of us has been extinguished, and a cool mist has enveloped the jungle. There is no chirping of birds. Except for the sound of the accompanying photographer dismantling the tent not far away, the jungle at this moment is as quiet as at night. Zhang Lingzi handed over the reheated rabbit meat. "Eat quickly, you can go on your way after eating." Zhang Kaiwen didn't show any pretense. After thanking him, he took the meat and ate it. After finishing the meal, he burped, and he woke up and revived with full blood. Started and continued walking towards the lake in the jungle. This time the two of them were not picky. They picked all the edible plants they encountered along the way, even if the fruits were still green. Zhang Kaiwen even picked up firewood while walking. When he couldn't carry it anymore, he tied it up with vines and dragged it on the ground. Zhang Lingzi looked over and didn't stop him. If he couldn't find a place to take shelter when the rain fell, the firewood would naturally be useless. but if you are lucky enough to find a cave or something like that, the firewood can be used for burning. John Kaiwin originally thought he could catch another rabbit today, but perhaps because of the upcoming rain, the rabbits were hiding in their holes and could not come out. It looks like I'm going to be vegetarian today, he pretended to be optimistic. That's fine, I just need to clean my intestines. The fog is gradually dissipating, but the weather is still gloomy and the sun has no shadow. Zhang Lingzi paused as she walked. The wind has picked up. After taking a look at the surrounding environment, her feet suddenly accelerated again. Go faster. The reason why the two words wind and rain always appear at the same time is naturally because the wind started and the rain came right after. Not long after walking, Zhang Kaiwen heard a pop sound and felt a chill on his forehead. It's over, it started. Don't stop, keep going, stand there and wait for the rain. Looking at the two people's increasingly rapid steps, the audience in the live broadcast room couldn't help but feel anxious. It's not terrible to be caught in the rain. The terrible thing is that there is no change of clothes. If you catch a cold. Fortunately, the of luck finally favored them. Before the rain got heavier, Zhang Lingzi, who was walking in front, took the lead in seeing a hole that was half covered by weeds. She was sure that it was not a nest of other animals, so she took the lead and bent down to get in. Zhang Kaiwen followed closely, dragging the few remaining firewood, and finally the photographer who followed behind. The lens then goes dark. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 56. Chapter 56 To Eat or Not to Eat? After entering, I found that the cave was extremely small. After the four people stood in, it was difficult to even turn around. The photographer didn't care about the still dark lens for a moment. He immediately took out a raincoat from his backpack and put it on. Before going out, he left one camera in the cave and another at the entrance of the cave. The space in the cave is now a little wider. Zhang Kaiwen knelt down and touched the firewood that was running out and throwing away. It's still wet. Zhang Lingzi patted the water droplets on his clothes and looked at his sad face. Fortunately, we hid quickly. The firewood is only wet on the surface and can still burn. The smoke may become louder later. But on this wet and rainy day, there is not so much to pay attention to. It took twice as long as usual to light the fire. The two of them squatted in front of the fire to warm themselves up, and then their expressions visibly softened. It is raining and windy outside, and it is a very happy thing to have such a warm fire. The audience in the live broadcast room saw that the condition of the two of them had improved from the initial embarrassment to the present, and then they relaxed and went to watch the live broadcast rooms of other guests. It couldn't be raining in only one place in the jungle. They were curious about how the other groups of guests coped and whether any of them were more embarrassed. Looking at it one round, no surprise, Sui and Zhou Yi are the most comfortable. There was a rainproof tent, and it was known in advance that it would rain. When the audience went to their live broadcast room, they saw a young couple sitting in the tent playing a stone-throwing game, unaffected by the wind and rain outside. The second most comfortable place is Lin Jing's live broadcast room. Although there is no tent, he has a tarpaulin. Find a relatively high place to set up. Although you can't avoid the wind blowing from all directions, at least you won't be caught in the rain. When Su Zhao sensed that it was going to rain, he made a prompt decision and made himself a simple koi raincoat using the wild grass and leaves that he could pick with his hands. Although he could not find shelter after the rain started, he still stood wearing the koi raincoat. Under the trees with dense branches and leaves, most of the water vapor is also isolated. It's just that as soon as the audience entered the live broadcast room, they saw a large green lump moving. They were startled and then realized that this lump was a guest. However, The most surprising thing is that the live broadcast rooms of Yu Hui and Zhang Ziyu, which have always been at the bottom, have directly surpassed the number of online viewers of the other 4 live broadcast rooms. The time goes back a quarter of an hour. Yu Hui was awakened from his sleep by raindrops falling on his face. There was a sleeping bag in their team, so it was naturally given to Zhang Ziyu. He sat up and felt dazed for a second. He couldn't bear to blame the photographer who was taking the photo next to him for not warning him. Yu Hui quickly got up and went to the other side to call Zhang Ziyu, who was tightly wrapped up and sleeping soundly. "Wake up, it's raining." While the two of them were hurriedly packing up the equipment in the temporary camp and preparing to find a place to take shelter from the rain, Zhang Ziyu thought of her little rabbit. "Wait a minute, I want to take the little rabbit with me." Yu Hui took a deep breath and followed Zhang Ziyu to help her cover the rain with his hands. The makeshift rabbit nest was quiet. Yu Hui thought the rabbit had sneaked away last night, until Zhang Ziyu pulled out a stiff rabbit corpse from the corner. The cold and hard feeling in his palm made Zhang Ziyu stunned for 2 seconds. Then he screamed and threw it out, "Rabbit, the rabbit is dead." Yu Hui looked at her pale face for a moment, and didn't care about the rabbit that was thrown back to the ground. He quickly comforted, "Newborn rabbits are like this. They are very weak and will die if they are not careful. Even if I didn't kill the rabbit yesterday, if it was picked up, it wouldn't survive last night." But Zhang Ziyu was still immersed in shock and sadness. He turned a deaf ear to these words of comfort and just stood there motionless. Seeing the rain getting heavier and heavier, Yu replied, "We have to go take shelter from the rain quickly." He really couldn't understand, was the focus now on the dead rabbit? They should quickly find a place to take shelter from the rain to prevent catching a cold. For the first time in his life, Yu Hui's love for Zhang Ziyu was mixed with a trace of impatience that he himself was not aware of. "But rabbit. Since it's dead, rather than leaving it alone, it's better to take it away. Although this rabbit is not big, it is enough for the two of us to have a meal." Zhang Ziyu looked at Yu Hui in disbelief. "You still want to eat it?" "I think it's a waste." Yu Hui knelt down and picked up the rabbit from the ground. His fingers just touched the rabbit's abdomen and he paused. He originally thought that the rabbit was too weak to die, but it wasn't the case. Thinking of Zhang Ziyu holding the rabbit and feeding it enthusiastically for a long time yesterday, he was out of sight and didn't pay attention. The baby rabbit didn't know it was hungry or full, so it was fed to death. Yu Hui stood up with the rabbit in his arms and couldn't help but glance at Zhang Ziyu silently. He hesitated for a while but still didn't tell the truth. However, although he didn't say anything, many viewers in the live broadcast room had already guessed the clues after seeing the strangeness between Rabbit's body and Yu Hui's body just now. "Ha ha ha, let me make a bold guess. Zhang Ziyu couldn't have suffocated this rabbit to death, right? I am a medical student and saw that the rabbit's abdomen was obviously bulging, and the cause of death was almost death from strangulation. After learning the true cause of rabbit's death, I could no longer look directly at Zhang Ziyu's heartbroken face." Yu Hui looked like he had discovered it, but he didn't say it out loud, so he saved Zhang Ziyu's face. "I think Zhang Ziyu is hypocritical. I can understand why he was reluctant to kill animals when he was alive. Now that they are dead, you can eat what you have to eat. There is nothing to be reluctant to part with. Don't tell me that you have been a vegetarian since you were a child." As soon as this barrage appeared, it was immediately attacked by Zhang Ziyu fans in the live broadcast room. However, as the number of passers-by who wanted to stay and see if Zhang Ziyu would eat rabbit meat gradually grew, Zhang Ziyu fans of "You can't get enough of it either." Zhang Yuding was originally opening a can of Coke happily for the audience that was rapidly growing and staying in Zhang Ziyu's live broadcast room. When she saw the messy comments, her mood suddenly changed. "Are you addicted to creating a kind-hearted fairy character? No matter what the occasion is now, when it comes to eating meat, you'd better not give me a bite. If you can't resist the temptation and eat it, no matter how successful the character you create at the beginning will be, it will collapse later. Because of the disagreement caused by the rabbit, it rained heavily and the two of them started to look for shelter from the rain. By the time we found shelter from the rain, we were almost all wet. Tired, hungry, clammy, and uncomfortable. Yu Hui endured his fatigue and found some hay, and finally lit up the fire. He asked Zhang Ziyu to warm the fire first while he carried the rabbit further away. When he came back, he put the prepared rabbit meat on the fire and roasted it in silence. Zhang Ziyu pursed his lips, but didn't say anything. When the meat is gradually cooked, even without seasoning, the aroma enters people's nose uncontrollably. Yu Hui tore off a piece and tasted it was cooked. He took it off and blew on it while eating. As he ate, the goddess sitting opposite couldn't help but swallow her saliva. He tore off the rabbit leg that was left over and handed it over. Would you like to eat it? The audience in the live broadcast room finally waited for this moment, and their eyes fell on the tender roasted rabbit leg. They just want to know, kind little fairy, can you really bear to eat this piece of meat? End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 57. Chapter 57 Filter broken. Zhang Ziyu tightened his clothes. I can't eat. If I hadn't watched you turn your head away from the camera and swallow quietly after saying this, I might have believed it. If you can't eat it, then don't eat it until you can eat it. Yu Hui wrapped the rabbit leg meat and put it aside. His heart was inexplicably complicated, and he was also a little tired that he didn't even want to admit. Before meeting Zhang Ziyu face to face, the goddess was like the moon in the sky in his heart. No part of her body was imperfect. He still remembered his excitement and anxiety when he saw the real person up close 2 days ago. But now only 2 days have passed, and he feels many things that he has never felt before. Feeling tired is just one of them, there is also fatigue and helplessness. Think about it, before he entered the entertainment industry, he was also the young master of the Yu family. When he went out to play, his friends would always support him. In fact, he had never even carried it to his mother since he was a child. In this jungle, he took care of Zhang Ziyu, who was obviously not adaptable, carrying him through the streets, looking for food and camping. It can be said that from the time he entered the jungle to now, except for the necessary rest at night, he had never had any leisure time. But because of Zhang Ziyu's kind-heartedness, he had a hard time eating such a meal. Listening to the patter of rain coming from outside, Yu Hui lowered his eyes and looked at the fire in front of him in silence. For a moment, he felt peaceful and sober as never before. Looking up unexpectedly, he happened to catch Zhang Ziyu's gaze directed at the rabbit leg meat. He suddenly couldn't help but chuckle. At this moment, Zhang 11Yu's face turned upside down, and his face was even a little darkened by the smoke from the fire. His hair was still wet, and the strands looked like freshly soaked noodles. The image of a big star was gone. It seems that the goddess filter has faded away, and the person in front of me is no different from ordinary people. Even, thinking about it, it's pretty useless. Zhang Ziyu felt that this sudden smile was a bit strange. He flipped up his hair to break the inexplicable silence in front of him and said, "What are you laughing at?" Yu Hui shook his head, "Nothing. I just think that the person in front of me who was crazy about the person in front of me was a little funny." Gililu. The sound of stomach growling became more and more clear in the quiet atmosphere. Yu Hui picked up the piece of rabbit leg meat and said, "Eat it. If you don't want to eat it, then I will eat it." Zhang Ziyu covered his stomach that kept growling, gritted his teeth and was about to refuse again, when he saw Yu Hui unwrap the leaves and was about to put them into his mouth. He couldn't help but cursed in his heart, he couldn't take advantage of the camera to take other pictures. Did you secretly give it to her while avoiding the camera? There was only this piece of meat left. If she couldn't put it into her mouth now, and she couldn't go out to look for food on this rainy day, she would have no choice but to continue to be so hungry. Just thinking about it makes me feel tormented and terrible. That. Yu Hui puts the meat into his mouth. Well, Zhang Ziyu bit his lower lip. I thought about it and think what you said makes sense. Since the little rabbit is dead and the rabbit cannot be resurrected, it would be good if it can help us satisfy our hunger after death. Before it's because I'm too sad and persistent. Yu Hui looked at Zhang Ziyu, who was gnawing the rabbit leg meat eagerly, feeling calmer than ever before. However, the barrage area in the live broadcast room has exploded. Many people were patiently watching the live broadcast, wanting to see whether Zhang Ziyu could carry out her kindness from birth to death. Some people think that she can insist on not eating, while others think that she will definitely not be able to bear the hunger. But I didn't expect that she would say such words before eating the meat. The rabbit can't come back to life. Are you trying to comfort yourself? I was just trying to save my respect for what I said before. I felt a bit pretentious, so I walked away. I'm just pretending to care about the little animals. At least if the little animals I raise die, I will never be able to eat them no matter how hungry I am. You should at least act sad when you eat. Seeing the audience in the live broadcast room swishing down quickly when Zhang Ziyu started eating meat, Zhang Yuding couldn't hold back and threw the Coke can in her hand. I shouldn't have agreed to your participation in this show. Hell, you can take advantage of this show to suppress Zhang Lingzi and get a wave of fans. It's better to discredit Zhang Lingzi again. She has only seen that the atmosphere in Zhang Lingzi's live broadcast room is much better than here, and there is also a hot search about archery, which is still popular. She is still attracting fans, and she behaves like this. She will be thankful if she doesn't lose her fans. Zhang Ziyu, who had finally filled his stomach, could not see the barrage in the live broadcast room at this moment, nor could he hear the thoughts of his cousin and manager. Finally filling her stomach with a piece of rabbit leg meat, before she could even breathe a sigh of relief, she heard a reminder from the photographer outside: the rain has stopped. The remaining bones she was holding in her hand and ready to throw into the fire just paused in the air. You stood up and extinguished the fire skillfully. It should be considered slow for us to go on the road. Since the rain has stopped, let's continue on the road. Zhang Ziyu wanted to wait a little longer. The rain had just stopped and everything outside must be wet, especially the ground. There was mud everywhere and it was too dirty. But when she raised her eyes to meet Yu's gaze that was looking back, the words she was about to say were inexplicably stalled, and she temporarily changed to, "Okay. I feel like something is different about me, a little rich young fan." Asterisk. While the two of them were catching up with the progress of other teams, Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Kaiwen were fishing. They also set off as soon as the rain stopped. As a result, they encountered a river while walking. Compared with the river in front of them, which was almost 5 meters wide, the water sources they encountered in front of them could only be called creeks at best. Because it had just rained, the river water surged in a short period of time, and the water level was less than 10 centimeters from the shore. Zhang Lingzi was still looking for where to get into the water to reach the other side faster, when she heard Zhang Kaiwen pointing at the river and shouting to her, "There are fish in this river." Thinking that the next meal had not yet arrived, the two of them were not in a hurry to cross the river. They took out their unused hooks and lines and started fishing. There was only one fish hook, and Zhang Lingzi didn't want to wait around, so she simply asked Zhang Kaiwen to divide the fishing line into 2 sections, and she took one of them. Zhang Kaiwen complied with the instructions inexplicably, but still couldn't help but wonder, it's useless just with a fishing line. Sister Zixi, are you planning to imitate Zhang Taigong for fishing? I have my own use, catching your fish. Zhang Kaiwen touched his nose and walked to the shore and threw out the fishhook in his hand. When he was waiting for the fish to take the bait, he looked towards Zhang Lingzi and saw that she had tied one end of the fishing line to the end of one of the arrows, and then tied the other end. "Tie it around your wrist." Suddenly his eyes widened and he exclaimed, "Shoot a fish with an arrow." End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, X Press 11. Chapter 58. Chapter 58, Burden turns into bug. Looking at the fish that came to the surface one after another for air after a rain, Zhang Lingzi ignored Zhang Kaiwen, who was still screaming beside him. He only weighed the arrow in his hand and tried to stab the nearest fish. If she had used her original body, she could guarantee that this arrow would hit 100%, but now that she has changed to a body without muscle memory, she really can't guarantee that it can hit these little ones who are extremely flexible in the water. This is not the same as on the ground. Sometimes the eyes can deceive themselves. The arrow quickly plunged into the water, and the tip of the arrow was blocked for a moment after it hit the water surface. The fish under the water, which was about to poke its head out for air, noticed the unusual fluctuations on the side, flicked its tail, and quickly dived into the bottom of the water. Zhang Kaiwen, just a little bit. Zhang Lingzi took back the empty arrow through the fishing line and continued to look for the next target with a calm expression. This kind of thing cannot be rushed. The more urgent it is, the more likely it will be missed. Wei Ke was watching carefully in the yard with his mobile phone. Su Xinyuan, who sneaked out from the study to watch with him, couldn't help but said, "Wei Ke, the fish in the water are so flexible, do you think the pretty sister can hit them?" Wei Ke put his hand on his head and rubbed it. "Why are there so many questions? Keep reading." There were also a lot less barrages in the live broadcast room, and everyone wanted to see if Zhang Lingzi could catch a fish. When the second and third attempts failed, some people couldn't help but make sarcastic remarks. "I just said, how can this man be omnipotent? He is only good at archery. He really thinks he can do everything. It's better to tie an earthworm to the fishing line and see if you can catch fish. This is because I feel too good about myself and I want to express myself." Su Xinyuan frowned and said, "Wei Ke, what these people say is so annoying. If you find it annoying, then don't read it. Have you finished practicing your calligraphy?" Su Xinyuan stuck out his tongue and wanted to sneak back to the study to continue practicing calligraphy. At the same time, he wanted to continue to see whether the beautiful sister could catch the fish. Fortunately, Zhang Lingzi gave him the answer quickly. 3 times in a row, I failed, but it was not completely fruitless. She has summed up the experience of at least 3 failures, so that she can ensure that she will not make similar mistakes in the next actions. Just as she was about to plunge in for the 4th time, the barrage disappeared. Both the people at the scene and the audience in the live broadcast room focused on the arrow. The arrow fell into the water, and this time it only made a slight sound. The fish on the surface were still eating water plants leisurely. When they sensed that danger was approaching, they were about to swim away, but they still took a step slower. The tip of the arrow penetrated the fish's dorsal fin, and the originally nimble fish suddenly lost its ability to swim completely. Bingo! As Zhang Kaiwen shouted in surprise, Zhang Lingzi pulled up the arrow and the fish by the fishing line. After carrying it and feeling the weight, the corners of her pursed lips curled up into a smile. Not even that, 3 pounds, not bad. Zhang Kaiwen no longer cared about the great fishing business in front of him. He fixed the temporary fishing rod with stones and came over. After watching the harvest of nearly 3 kilograms in front of him, he gave Zhang Lingzi a thumbs up and said, "Sister Zixi, you are this. So amazing." At first, he didn't hit the target the first 3 times. He also thought that this method was probably unreliable, and he wanted Zhang Lingzi to give up. Unexpectedly, he hit the target the 4th time. "Fortunately, I didn't have time to say it just now. But this fish just died like that." Zhang Lingzi raised her eyebrows. "What else? Isn't this a bit silly to ask?" "No, I was watching my mother cook fish. The fish could still jump out of the pot after it was cooked, but you only pricked it once, and the fish seemed to be completely dead." Mother Zhang watched her son talk about his embarrassment on the live broadcast. "It seems that he has not been beaten for 3 days, and his skin is itchy." It has to do with the part where it was struck. Zhang Lingzi pulled the tip of the arrow out of the fish and pointed to the hole that remained there. As long as it is struck here, the fish will not be able to move. Shen Iking taught her this trick, and after using it, it worked repeatedly. From then on, when she fished for fish, she would only prepare this part. After all, if the fish is still alive and comes ashore, full of water droplets and fishy smell, how can it be so clean and tidy? Zhang Kaiwen finally understood the principle. An audience member in the live broadcast room. They were all speechless at this moment. It's enough if you can hit the fish, but you also have to ensure that it hits a certain part of the fish's body. The requirements don't need to be so stringent, really. You come on, I'm going fishing. Whether he can learn it or not, he should just keep fishing for his fish. But when he returns home after filming the show, he can teach his mother the experience he has learned so that he won't see the whole family catching fish in the kitchen in the future. After hitting 2 more small fish with arrows, he probably sensed that there was an unknown danger in this water area, and the originally active fish schools ran away. Zhang Lingzi also caught up when the fish caught, and together with the 2 caught by Zhang Kaiwen, a self-proclaimed fishing expert, they had a total of 5 fish, which was enough to feed them for the next whole day. It was almost noon, so the 2 of them simply stayed where they were and made a fire to grill fish. Yesterday I grilled rabbit, today I'm going to grill fish. It's a wonderful little life in the jungle. When Zhang Kaiwen finished singing his impromptu ditty happily while flipping the fish, Zhang Lingzi gave him a cool sentence: "Have you forgotten how embarrassed you were to hide from the rain in the morning? Aren't you tired from traveling during the day? Are you happy?" Zhang Kaiwen, rain is an irresistible factor, and after a tiring day, you can still have food to fill your stomach. Isn't it doubly happy? Zhang Lingzi was amused by Zhang Kaiwen's optimism. She arched her eyebrows and nodded lightly, "That's true. The jungle smells particularly fresh after the rain. The breeze is blowing, and you are eating grilled fish that is more delicious than grilled rabbit." For a moment, the scene shown in the live broadcast room does not look like surviving in the wilderness, but camping by the river. The weather in April is neither cold nor hot, and the flowers are blooming just right. I suddenly want to go camping in a nearby park. I just experienced it 2 days ago when I was working outside. I asked 3 or 2 little sisters to come with me. Remember to bring drinks and snacks, so I can stay outside all day. If possible, you can also bring some raw food and a barbecue grill. Barbecuing in the wild is more delicious, but you must pay attention to fire safety. It's the weekend in 2 days, it's a whole one. Looking at the barrage that became more and more biased as they chatted, and then at the 2 guys in the live broadcast room who were still eating grilled fish, Li Shuo couldn't help but tugged on his beard that he hadn't had time to shave in the past 2 days. This is wilderness survival. Can you give the audience a sense of tension and urgency like other live broadcast rooms? His eyes moved around Zhang Kaiwen's face and then stopped on Zhang Lingzi. It's this girl. I thought she was a burden, but I didn't expect it to be a bug. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 59. Chapter 59, Crossing the River. After eating and drinking, the camping mode switches back to survival mode. The first thing that came before their eyes was to cross the river. It is not practical to build a temporary bridge. The easiest way is to go directly down the river and walk across. Zhang Kaiwen found a long branch and tested the depth of the river water. It's about 1 meter close to the bank, and it will be deeper in the river, but it should not be more than the height of the 2 of us. While he was exploring the depth of the river water, Zhang Lingzi had already knelt down and stuffed the trousers into her short boots. She untied and tightened her shoelaces. She heard the sound and replied, "That's okay, no need to swim." After the photographer made all the equipment on hand waterproof and the lens switched to drone shooting mode, Zhang Lingzi stretched out a hand towards Zhang Kaiwen. Zhang Kaiwen looked at the hand in front of him in a daze. Zhang Lingzi could only urge, "Hold on, the current is a bit fast now, and there is still mud at the bottom of the river. It is more stable for two people to support each other than to go their own way. If you accidentally fall in, the other one can help pull it out." Oh, Zhang Kaiwen didn't expect that it would be better for two people to help each other to cross the river, but isn't this still live broadcast? After changing careers for so long, he would be confused by the audience even if he glanced at male and female stars in the entertainment industry. It can be said that I have seen a lot of emotional drama in the year, and it is inevitable to have some concerns at this moment. Unexpectedly, Zhang Lingzi handed over his hand without any hesitation. He was stunned for a moment, which was a normal reaction. After coming back to his senses, he pursed his lips and did not hold Zhang Lingzi's hand directly, but held it on her arm. "That's it, the tips of my ears can't help but turn red." Zhang Lingzi noticed it and raised her eyebrows without saying anything. She was afraid that if she said anything else, not only would his ears become red, but it would also spread to his face. I laughed secretly in my heart. How innocent. The eyes of the audience in the live broadcast room are like magnifying glasses. Even the smallest changes on the faces of the guests cannot escape their eyes. Not to mention Zhang Kaiwen's ears that turned red rapidly since he put his arm on Zhang Lingzi's side. "Oh my God, my brother is so innocent, he just held his arm, but he is so shy. I now completely believe what my brother said, that he has always been single as long as he has had a girlfriend before, he will not be so young." It can be seen that my brother was a little worried at first. He should also be thinking about Zhang Lingzi. After all, it is physical contact. But brother, don't worry. You and Zhang Lingzi stand together. It can be said that there is no sense of couple CP. Sister and brother CP are almost the same. There's absolutely no misunderstanding, ha ha ha. It's strange to say that it's obviously a combination of a beautiful boy and a gorgeous girl, but why is it so confusing that people can't think about it? I just want to say that I simply can't imagine what kind of person Zhang Lingzi is going to face anyway. It's definitely not someone like his younger brother. Jiang's mother and Lu Zhengzheng had different reactions when they saw this barrage. The former frowned and was a little dissatisfied. "Why is my Yuan not worthy of that, Miss Zhang? I think it is quite suitable. A brat like this needs a girl with a stronger personality to take care of him." Father Zhang, who was rarely able to go home for a meal at noon, looked up when he heard the sound, and said with a curious expression, "I remember you said before that Miss Zhang was not very good, so your attitude changed so quickly." It caught the person next to him off guard. Hearing the sound, Mother Zhang raised her head and glared at her husband. "Eat your food quietly, what are you saying?" After a pause, he added, "I think now, you really can't just rely on other people's hearsay, you have to see it with your own eyes." After watching the live broadcasts in the past 2 days, it was Miss Zhang who took care of our family. Most of them are Yuan. And although she doesn't talk much, she works hard and is not afraid of hardship. She can also shoot arrows and is very accurate. Maybe the bad things said about her on the internet are just because of jealousy. I think it's much better than Zhang Ziyu, who was also on the show. At least he's not pretentious. Father Zhang was amazed when he heard this. His wife was born into a wealthy family, and she was pampered by him even after she got married. She is now in her 40s, and her personality is still like that of a child, very innocent. It really surprised him to be able to say such a clear and logical analysis. "From what you said, that girl sounds really good. But whether they can succeed or not depends on themselves." "You don't have to say that," Mother Zhang snorted, "but Miss Zhang probably has no more friendship with us than teammates, otherwise she wouldn't be so calm." Indeed, although Zhang Lingzi admires Zhang Kaiwen very much. The young man is straightforward and energetic, tall and long-legged, and has good looks and a good personality. He definitely meets the standards of girls looking for boyfriends in this era, but she only admires him. Perhaps it was because she had seen better men. When Lu Zhengzheng saw the barrage, he subconsciously thought of Mr. Shen, whom he had only met once. Although she had never seen Mr. Shen and Sister Zixi standing together, it didn't stop her from thinking about it. Just as Tong Yu came over to get some water, she subconsciously asked, "Sister Tong, do you think Sister Zixi is a good match for Mr. Shen?" "Why do you ask this question suddenly?" "It suddenly occurred to me when I was watching the live broadcast. Unfortunately, I only met Mr. Shen once. Even the other party's appearance was somewhat unclear. The deepest impression left on her was the oppressive aura of the other party, even if he didn't deliberately reveal it." Tong Yu held the water glass and thought seriously, "If Xiao 11 had the same temper before, I can't even imagine what it would be like for her to stand with Mr. Shen. As for now, this idea is quite right. Although Mr. Shen is very good, our Xiao 11 is not bad now either. She is very confident in the current Zhang Lingzi, especially after watching this girl's performance in the live broadcast. She is even more confident." Lu Zhengzheng was satisfied and continued to watch the live broadcast. The chat in the live broadcast room was lively, but the two protagonists were trudging hard at the moment. Not only did he need to stabilize his body in the somewhat turbulent water, but he also had to be careful about the mud under his feet to prevent himself from sinking too deep. The only free hand could not really be free, holding up the only equipment and the remaining food. These cannot be soaked in water, otherwise they will be ruined. As they get closer to the center of the river, the water level gradually submerges to their chests. Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Kaiwen's hands holding each other's hands are no longer just holding each other lightly as at the beginning, but are holding each other's arms unconsciously. Nearly halfway through, the water level even reached Zhang Lingzi's chin. Zhang Kaiwen turned his head and looked over with some worry. Just when he was about to express concern, Zhang Lingzi raised his head slightly and said, "Don't be distracted, keep walking." He had no choice but to swallow his words, regain his composure, lift his feet with difficulty, and take another step forward. The water level is rising again. I believe some readers have discovered that Her Majesty the Queen is now on the shelves. Thank you all for your support since you entered Her Majesty the Queen. I hope that in the years to come, we will continue to move forward together with Her Majesty the Queen. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 60. Chapter 60 Changes. Zhang Lingzi took a step forward without hesitation, and this time the water level spread directly to the top of her lips. Seeing that everyone here could no longer launch the barrage, they all sweated for her. As we all know, the deeper the water, the greater the fear it brings to people, and it even increases exponentially. Unless you are a specially trained person, no one can avoid it. The most taboo thing at this time is to not be able to help but panic first. But when they looked at Zhang Lingzi's expression through the drone lens, there was no difference from when he first entered the water. There was not even the unconscious twitching at the corners of his cheeks and eyes. This shows that this girl's mentality is really stable. She is not panicked or impatient. Instead, Zhang Kaiwen couldn't help but start to worry. "Sister Zixi, can you swim? Why don't you pass the thing in your other hand to me and don't worry about me swimming over first? If you can, just nod lightly." Zhang Lingzi raised her head again, finally exposed her mouth to the water, and spoke quickly, "Next, the water level may spread to my forehead. I can hold my breath for almost a minute. During this time, I can pass through the deepest part of the center of the river." She did know how to swim, but if she handed over everything she was holding to Zhang Kaiwen would have to lift it with both hands. Her body would be washed away by the current, and there would be mud blocking the way under her feet, so she couldn't rely on her arms. Swing to maintain balance, and you will fall over if you are not careful. When a person falls in the water, he will subconsciously try to save himself at all costs. At that time, he will definitely throw away everything in his hand. In such a current, there is no chance to find it again, and all the previous efforts will be wasted. John Kaiwan couldn't guarantee that he would be able to reach the other side smoothly with his things alone. Listening to Zhang Lingzi's somewhat difficult instructions, he took a deep breath and nodded vigorously, "Okay." When the water level was about to reach his nose, Zhang Lingzi held her breath. When the water level was about to reach his eyes, Zhang Lingzi closed her eyes again. There was darkness in front of me, and only the water rushing through my eardrums was frighteningly clear. Finally reached the deepest point in the center of the river. The water level had now reached under Zhang Kaiwan's nose. He had to raise his head slightly to ensure breathing. He didn't care to look at Zhang Lingzi, who was almost completely submerged in the water but still raised one arm steadily. He only had one thought in his mind at the moment: go forward steadily. The audience watching the live broadcast could not help but hold their breath at this moment. Whether they were anti-fans or passers-by, they all silently encouraged the two of them, especially Zhang Lingzi, "Hold on, you must hold on." Finally past the deepest part of the water level, Zhang Kaiwan felt the tip of his nose fall back to his chin under the water. Zhang Kaiwan almost couldn't wait to look to his side. "Sister Zixi." Almost at the moment when he finished speaking, Zhang Lingzi opened her eyes in the water, feeling the water level finally fall back below her eyes. The washed eyelashes trembled slightly, and the water droplets on the eyelashes also trembled. The beautiful red phoenix eyes under the camera were still clear and lively. Even the audience could see that she could only use her words because she could not speak yet. What the eyes convey: get excited later and keep walking. Everyone couldn't help but cover their hearts. As he continued to walk forward, the water level dropped again. After his nose could breathe, his mouth could finally speak, Zhang Lingzi said in approval, "Not bad, 1 minute and 6 seconds. "Sister Zixi, have you been counting the time?" Zhang Kaiwan exclaimed and apologized, "It's still 6 seconds late. I'm speaking conservatively, because I'm afraid that you're too slow and will hold me back." Zhang Kaiwan. After the two of them finally climbed up to the other side, Zhang Kaiwan put the things in his hands on the grass next to him. He didn't care about the muddy shoes on his feet and sat down on the ground to rest. At the same time, he didn't forget to give Zhang Lingzi a big thumbs up. Thumb. Even he himself didn't expect that they came over so smoothly, and the equipment and food did not get a trace of water. He also knew very well that Zhang Lingzi was under much greater pressure than he was, especially when he passed through the center of the river when he could neither breathe nor open his eyes. If it were him, he wouldn't know if he could survive it for 30 seconds, let alone a minute. The part in the middle of the river gave him the deepest impression. Even at that time, Zhang Lingzi's steps were still as firm as before, and the hand holding his arm had no change in strength. This calmness made him sincerely admire. Zhang Lingzi gave him a thumbs up as a reward for his action of crossing the river. Then he took off his shoes and walked to the river to start cleaning the mud on his shoes. Upon seeing this, Zhang Kaiwan said, "Sister Zixi, don't be in a hurry this time, just take a rest first." Zhang Lingzi didn't even look back and replied, "I would rather wear clean shoes and rest by the fire." Sounds really good. So Zhang Kaiwan also took off his shoes and went over to wash them together. After watching the two of them sitting in front of the fire with clean shoes to warm their clothes, and having ended the previous thrills and returned to the peaceful state of the years, the quiet barrage area became active again. I admit, I have changed my opinion of Zhang Lingzi. I really didn't like her much except for her face before, but now, I find her shining point. Zhang Lingzi was really strong when she just crossed the river. I just took a basin, filled it with water, buried my face in it, and tried to hold my breath. Let alone a minute, 30 seconds was a little short of it. It's really hard to imagine that Zhang Lingzi could last even 1 minute under such conditions. How many minutes? To be honest, the vital capacity in the front is a bit low, but it should be said that it is much more difficult for Zhang Lingzi to hold his breath than when you test it with a wash basin. How can he remain calm under such conditions and not be affected by the surrounding environment? This psychological quality is indeed superior to most people. I honestly admit that I couldn't do it. Can't add one. Almost the whole screen is filled with impossible barrages, occasionally mixed with a few other items. It is rare that this time there is no barrage from Hey Zhang Lingzi. There is no way to remove the black spots. In the previous live broadcast, I could barely find some spots that could be used to remove the black spots, but this time I really couldn't find them. If you specifically remove blackmailers, anyone with a brain can tell that you are a fan of Zhang Lingzi, and the account may be reported by other viewers, which is not worth the loss. Li Shuo also breathed a sigh of relief and took out a tissue to wipe the sweat on the tip of his nose. Even he broke into a cold sweat for Zhang Lingzi just now. It was not just tens of seconds but more than a minute. If he accidentally choked on water, it would definitely be regarded as the first major accident since the start of the broadcast, and it was still in its happening right now to millions of viewers. He can finally see that this girl is not only a bug among the guests, she is also here to torture the fragile little heart of an old man like him. End of this chapter.